Hello, I'm Adam with RecordKrate, and this is Sean. And we're going to hang
Cheers,
out and
everybody.
do some cocktails and vinyl and
Yeah.
remember Creed Taylor. Cocktails and
So, man, I don't know, Adam. I mean, so, before we get into Creed Taylor, it's probably worth mentioning Joey Defrancesco as well. Because, that guy, I mean, they both died around the same time. But, man, Defrancesco, his contributions to jazz organ was incredible. Plus, he was a trumpeter. He was a saxophonist. He played with every jazz musician of the last 30 years that you want to name. I mean, he got his first record deal when he was 16. He played in Miles Davis's band on a European tour in the 80s when he was, if not a teenager, he would have still been a teenager. And he was playing with Miles Davis in Europe for about 5 weeks. He played on one of his 80s records. God, I mean, this guy's played with John McLaughlin, with Lee Ritenour, with, I mean, so many well-known, band leaders and musicians. And, he had an enormous amount of respect, and even, stuff that he did in his own right. I mean, the stuff he did as a sideman is just amazing. I mean, he was another one of those guys like Gene Ammons in the respect that if it has Gene Ammons' name on it, it's good. If it has Joey DeFrancesco's name on it, it's good. And while I have heard lots and lots of his music, the only one of his records that I actually have on vinyl is this one. This came out in 2014 on Blue Note, and he was a sideman on this, but it's called Enjoy the View. And it's got Bobby Hutcherson on vibes. Joey DeFrancesco plays both organ and trumpet, depending on the track. And then you got David Sanborn on sax, and Billy Hart, who was the guest drummer. And this record smokes. It's very, very good. And
hello,
it's funny.
Time Fragment. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us.
That Time Fragment.
If you're just getting here, we're remembering Creed Taylor and Joey, and so there we go. Joey also pretty much brought the Hammond organ back to jazz. With so much smooth jazz that happened, it vanished.
Oh yeah. Now, I mean, I've heard people call him the second coming of Jimmy Smith, which I mean, depending on how you look at Jimmy Smith.
I'll look at him very good. Hey, Tony, how are you? Thanks for joining. This is Sean. Seems like it's a good time for everybody's phone just to ding and blah, ding and blah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there we go. We'll get to know Joey a little more a little later.
All right.
Things goes on.
But
be more talk and more awareness. And oh yeah, by the way,
Yeah. But I mean, Creed Taylor, good God. I mean, what can you say about that guy? I mean, if there was anything resembling a record mogul in the jazz realm, it had to have been Creed Taylor. I mean, the guy had no formal training at all. He just decided one day that he wanted to be a record producer, and he went to New York City, and he had originally graduated from Duke, I believe, and he found a record label in New York City called Bethlehem, who produced some great jazz records in their day. This would have been, I don't know, mid to late 50s, probably around 56, 57. And he went to New York City, found this record label that was also run by a Duke alum, and somehow managed to convince him to
I can do it better.
Yeah, convinced him to let him join the record label, and he ended up producing a few albums for Bethlehem. The only one that I have that he produced for Bethlehem is this one. It was an album by Kai Winding and JJ Johnson, just called Chick K and JJ. And this record, I mean, anybody that knows my taste in jazz knows I love Kai and JJ. So, they, two excellent trombone players. They sort of set the standard in a lot of ways for jazz trombone in the future. So, that was the only one I think I had that actually, that I knew was produced by Creed Taylor. But,
Russell,
of course, after he left Bethlehem after a short time, he went over to ABC. And yes, sir, R.I.P. Creed, no doubt, Russ, Tony. Guy was a legend. And, he wasn't a musician or anything. He just really liked jazz. Decided he wanted to produce.
And Russell, Creed was from close to where you are. And I never hear of the town doing anything to honor him, even years ago.
After Bethlehem, Creed went over to ABC and spent a couple of years producing just, modern popular music of the time. And then he managed to convince ABC Brass to start up a jazz label called Impulse, which obviously would go on to become one of the hallmark jazz labels, and or as a lot of people refer to it, the house that Train built. Creed Taylor was the one that signed John Coltrane to the label. He was like their flagship artist when they first got started. But interestingly, he left that label like right after he founded it and got it off the ground. He produced the first handful of Impulse records, and then he pretty much turned the reins over to Bob Thiel. And Bob Thiel kept that label running throughout the 60s. Impulse rules, Russ. There's so many great recordings that came out on that label. God. But interestingly enough, the one Bethlehem album that I had that was produced by him was a Kai and JJ record. And the very first Impulse album, catalog number A1. Oh, hold on. Where is it? There we go. A1 was also Kai and JJ. Creed produced this. He produced 7 total Impulse albums. So there was that one.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that a bunch. Impulse rules.
This is A2. This is Ray Charles. Genius plus soul equals jazz. A2. This one, it was funny too, because regardless of label, you could always see Creed's signature wherever he produced. Right there, produced by Creed Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah.
The third one was another trombone album, but this one only by Kai Winding. This is one I actually got from you, Adam. A3. This is the incredible Kai Winding Trombones. This is another great record if you like jazz trombone. And then this one is, it's a little, some people like it, some people don't. But this is Out of the Cool by Gil Evans. Gil Evans was known, as a composer and, band leader, did a lot of orchestra stuff. He did work with Miles Davis that is very, very highly regarded on some of his early Columbia records. But Gil Evans did a few things for Impulse. This is one of them. And this one was produced by Creed. This is A4. A5 is, for my money, one of the greatest jazz recordings of all time, and I think no jazz library, no matter how big or small, is complete without a copy. This is Blues and the Abstract Truth. From later pressings of this had a different cover, and it was billed as the band leader being Oliver Nelson. The original covers don't really list a band leader, and as a matter of fact, the top name on it is Bill Evans, not Oliver Nelson. But generally, this is considered an Oliver Nelson record. And Oliver Nelson was another one like Gil Evans that was a band leader, did a lot of orchestra type stuff. And this does not have an orchestra on it. This is just a 6-person jazz ensemble bringing the heat. This is hands down one of the greatest jazz albums of all time. I mean, there's no question in my mind about that. Amazing, top to bottom, and it has stood the test of time very, very well. And then we're on to A6, which is the artist that Creed Taylor did, his flagship artist. This is the first Impulse album from John Coltrane, Africa Brass, came out in 1962. This is good as far as his Impulse catalog goes. Not his best, of course. The best was certainly yet to come. Things like Crescent, Love Supreme, and that kind of thing.
Almost MT. Very, very, very close. Very, very close, but almost. It's kind of like Randy Jackson from American Idol versus Randy Jackson from Zebra.
There you go. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Ain't no psychotic outbursts either. All right. And then let's see. The last Impulse album that I could figure was produced by Creed Taylor was the other Gil Evans album that was put out on Impulse. This one's called Into the Hot. And this one is out there. And I like it. A lot of people don't, but I do. Which is why I have it on my shelf. So, the one thing about Creed Taylor was that he always had his ear to the ground for, trends in jazz and what was really resonating with people and things. And that was, I think, always one of his real strong points as a producer, was that he knew how to get those sounds and he could figure it out. And I mean, he produced so many successful jazz records over the years.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So what town were you referring to that he was from that never paid him any homage?
Oh gosh, what was it called? I'll have to look it up. I was reading about it, last week when I heard that he died. But,
oh, go ahead.
Just the fact, he was from not far at all from us. He was born and grew up in Lynchburg before his family moved away to, was it West Virginia that his parents moved to? And then he ended up, in Durham, and it was just awesome. But in the end, he still lived in Virginia, Harrisburg. And but in the end, Germany was his home.
Interesting.
Yes, yeah. Oh, hi, weirdo. Back to you. Hey, TARDIS, how are you?
Yeah, he did. TARDIS. So that's a good segue, right? So after Creed goes and gets Impulse off the ground, he decides he's done with that, and he moves on to Verve. And when you come to record labels that are in the conversation for having the greatest library of jazz recordings in the world, Personally, I only think there's two labels in that conversation. One is Columbia, the other one is Verve. So Creed went to Verve, and he spent a pretty good amount of time at Verve in the mid 60s up through about 1970. And speaking of producing successful jazz albums and Creed producing amazing jazz albums, this was probably the crowning achievement of his production career. Getz Gilberto. This is one of the best-selling jazz albums of all time. It's one of the best-loved jazz albums of all time. It still sounds great today. This was the record that brought bossa nova into the public consciousness in the United States. I think you'll find a lot of people that would agree that without this record, bossa nova would have ended up being nothing but a curiosity for tourists that visited Brazil. This really brought bossa nova to the public consciousness in a very, very big way. Some other great albums on Verve that he produced. Gil Evans' Conversations with Myself. This is solo piano, amazing. Solo piano albums have always been kind of hit or miss with me. I like some of Thelonious Monk's solo piano work on Riverside and stuff like that, but this is probably a contender for my favorite solo piano record. Time fragment I just use the vinyl style 12-inch outer sleeves usually. Those seem to work fine, and they do their job, right? They absorb the ring wear so the cover doesn't, and yeah. Yeah, he produced some great stuff from Gil Evans and Wes Montgomery Tardis, no doubt. Some other underrated Verve records that he oversaw. So Stan Getz, speaking of Getz Gilberto's, Stan Getz has always been a little bit hit or miss with me, but when he hits hard. And this one's a hit. Sweet Rain, oh my goodness. This album is so good. So this
is a good one, Russell.
Oh yeah, Russell, that's a great one. Another underrated one on Verve, I think that he did that I've always really enjoyed and go back to a lot is this one, Hobo Flats by Jimmy Smith. This one has orchestra sections and things, but just the album start to finish, I mean, it's just got that classic Creed Taylor sound. I mean, when you listen to this, you're just like, oh, hey, this must be a Creed Taylor production, and it is. It's fantastic.
That is so true, Tardis. An amazing guy.
And then,
oh yeah,
Al Di Meola's Almost Anything is a nice listen. I've always really liked Al Di Meola. I think he, I won't say he never got the due he deserved, because he was rather famous, at his commercial apex, but I feel like he sort of puttered out with the public sooner than he should have. Al Di Meola is a fantastic artist. He's a great musician. He's a great songwriter. Yeah, I love Al Di Meola. Yeah, I saw that Al's on Instagram these days, Russell. That's pretty cool. I haven't really dug into his account, but I've seen a few things he's posted.
I haven't seen it. I'll have to check it out.
And then after his stint at Verve, Creed decided to try his hand at running his own record label, and say it was pretty successful for him. In the early 70s, jazz was changing a lot. Fusion was becoming a thing, but Creed Taylor recognized that there was, still a market for traditional, kind of straight ahead jazz. And so he took a lot of these guys that were recording for Blue Note and Prestige back in the, the 50s and the 60s. And he signed a lot of these guys and formed his own label called CTI, Creed Taylor International. And beautiful album covers, nice laminated gatefold covers, the whole 9 yards. They were nice packages, and the music, some of those albums that were produced for CTI were just absolutely fantastic. And the arguably, you'd hear some people say this was the best CTI session. I'd say it's in the conversation. And interestingly, it's the first CTI album released, but Freddie Hubbard's Red Clay. You look at the names that play on that, Freddie Hubbard's Joe Henderson, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Lenny White. That pretty much reads like a 60s Blue Note session, and it's kind of what it sounds like. And it's awesome. Fantastic record. If you only own one CTI album on your shelves, this should probably be the one. It's accessible, and it sounds great, and it's very good. And the other cool thing about these early CTI records too is that they kept Rudy Van Gelder in business, because at that point Prestige and Blue Note had moved on to in-house mastering because they were owned corporate at that point. And so Rudy Van Gelder lost those labels as the 60s was ending, but Creed Taylor stepped in, and Rudy Van Gelder mastered and cut all of those early CTI records. So,
hello, Dave. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Hey, Dave.
Gosh. There you go, TARDIS. And Kirby.
This was always another CTI favorite of mine. Early album by George Benson called Beyond the Blue Horizon. George Benson is, of course, these days remembered by mainstream jazz, or, by mainstream music history as being, smooth jazz and breezing and all that kind of thing. And George Benson didn't really do himself a lot of favors, because when you're dealing with art cliques like jazz, popularity is like poison. And George Benson chose popularity over art in the end. But this was before all that. This was back when he was still playing with Miles, and was still young and hungry. And that Beyond the Blue Horizon album is fantastic. This is another one that I've always kind of liked. It's probably not Kenny Burrell's strongest yacht jazz. You could make that case, Russell, especially for, George Benson and some of that later period Grover Washington Jr. stuff, and, Gato Barbieri and all. Yeah, kind of.
But they made so much money with that. They earned.
They did.
That was on a whole new genre of radio stations, popped up. And so,
smooth jazz was arguably the most successful format in the history of radio, and then maybe next to talk. But and how that name came about, or so to speak, was CD 101.5 in New York at the time was playing this kind of music, and they couldn't figure out what they wanted to call it. So they got together a focus group. Oh, I do too, Russell. I do too. Grover Washington Jr.'s Mr. Magic, that is probably one of my favorite 70s. Probably it's a contender for my favorite jazz album of the 70s. Mr. Magic's amazing. But anyway, so CD 101.5 in New York was trying to figure out what to call this station, this format that they were doing. And they got together a focus group, and apparently this one lady in the focus group said, "Yeah, you're right, Dave. You're right. Well, I don't know. Was it Benson or was it John McLaughlin? I don't know.
I think
Yeah,
it was
it might have
Benson.
been
I'll
Benson.
check.
You know what? You might be right because Benson, I think, played on In a Silent Way. Either that or Miles in the Sky. So yeah, you might be right, Dave. Now that I mentioned it, because I think the first Miles album that John McLaughlin was on was Bitches Brew. I think Benson was on that too.
Well, so what year was that?
Bitches Brew?
What year would have been George Benson's first with
60.
Mills?
So if it was Miles in the Sky, it would have been 68. If it was
Okay,
In a
gotcha.
Silent Way, it would have been 69.
There you go. Yeah, I think it was. I could spend 10 minutes trying to find it. But yeah, I think you're right, Dave.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dave. Yeah.
Joe Beck may have been recorded with Miles first. Uh-oh.
Fight, 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 fight. I'm just kidding. Okay, yeah, Benson was on Miles in the Sky. Okay, yeah. I love Miles in the Sky. I need to pull that out and play it. It's been a minute. But going back to CTI, right? This might not be Kenny Burrell's greatest record, but I don't know. I've always gained a little bit of comfort from it. God bless the child. Interesting album cover, alluding to Vietnam, maybe. I don't know, but
MASH.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't Suicide is Dangerous on that record?
Suicide is Painless? Oh, no, I don't think so. I can't imagine a jazz cover of that. Yeah, no. Man, you want to talk about a great lineup on this, though. It's got Kenny on guitar. It's got Ron Carter on bass, Billy Cobham on drums, Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, Hubert Laws on flute, Hugh Lawson on piano and electric piano, and Ray Barretto on drums. Jeez. Also have a cello player on the session, so. Another great Freddie Hubbard band leader session on CTI. Did he really, Russell? When did he do that? Was it in the 70s or was it later in his career? This Freddie Hubbard album, First Light, this is another one.
That's where I saw it. I sold that record last Saturday. Yeah, it was on
First
the body.
Light?
Don't remember the title right now, but I remember listening to it and saying, that is so cool. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Around 73. Yeah, I mean, that would have been right when MASH was getting popular, because I think the first season of MASH was 72.
I think there was a movie.
I was never a big fan of MASH, but then again, MASH got canceled when I was like 3 years old. I think it got canceled in 82, so I would have been 3. But I've gone back and watched reruns, and it wasn't really my thing. But
yeah, I don't get it either, but that's okay. I'm happy for the people that do. Yeah.
That's interesting, TARDIS. I didn't know that.
Nothing to do with the music, but the opening of MASH was filmed in California. Yes. I've seen those behind the scenes. Let's go to the desert and match up the scenes. Yeah, there it is.
So this was...
Oh, really? And you've been there before, haven't you, TARDIS? Seoul, Korea. Oh, my.
And the last CTI album I pulled, the last Creed Taylor record too, was this one, Ron Carter's Blues Farm. This is another one of my favorite CTI records. This one's just got such a great sound to it and a great vibe. Love it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
yeah, I went and I've been looking at Mills' discography, and I think the consensus is correct.
George Benson.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that was correct. So yeah, absolutely. Go Dave. Mills, my Mills in the Sky. Yeah, very cool. Yeah,
Yeah, Rupert, you're
miss
right
comedy
about
show.
comedy. Yeah, you're right, Rupert. Comedy is always very much a product of its time, and there isn't a lot of comedy that really holds the test of time because references get lost on people over time. Great example of that. One of my favorite sitcoms of all time was the original Bob Newhart show from the early '70s, the one with him and Suzanne Plachette. And after I got into that show and watched the entire series and all that, I realized I found out that Bob Newhart used to do stand up in the '60s and stuff, and he produced an album called The Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart, and it was the first comedy album to ever go to #1 on the charts. I think that came out in 1960. And when I listened to it the first time, I don't think I laughed once because I wasn't alive in 1960. I didn't understand a lot of the references and things that he was talking about. But I remember going back and Googling some of the things that he was talking about and learning about it. And then once I had a good grip on it, I went back and listened to it again, and it was absolutely hilarious. So, yeah, comedy is always a very, very finicky thing when it comes to time passing.
TARDIS was in Korea for 15 years.
That's a long
No,
time.
5 years. 95, 2000. Yes, 15 years. Russell says I go into the disco orchestra jazz ones on CTI.
So speaking of that, Russell, are you much of a fan of those Hubert Laws records like Rites of Spring and that kind of thing? Are you like those records?
I think they're good.
I do too.
Russell, tell us. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have this one customer. His name is Tony. He loves CTI. And he and I both agree, no matter who the artist is, no matter the record, when you play a CTI record, it just sounds wonderful. So much production went into it in the way that they were mastered and pressed. And, forget the blah gate. We have wonderful CTI floating around. As a child, I inherited a large collection of Mad magazines from the 60s. And that really confused my teachers in the early 80s because I was making jokes about LJB and Nixon. Oh, boy.
I remember my dad getting a laugh out of my entire family. I mean, he knew the answer was absurd, but I remember him and my grandfather and my mom and a few other family members around the kitchen table one time playing Trivial Pursuit. And they took an arts and entertainment question, and it was, who was the host of Let's Make a Deal? And of course, everybody at the table knew the answer was Monty Hall, but my dad said Nixon.
Nixon. Ha ha. What? Me worry? That might be the best Hubbard album, in my opinion. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Rites of Spring's a good one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the name of the record that I enjoy so well. Deodato?
Deodato is fantastic. I've actually got that. Hang on. Yeah, this one. It's called Prelude.
Yeah.
Killer record.
I wish I could get 5 of those a week. So good.
Right there. Oh, hold on. There it is. Produced by Creed Taylor. Mm-hmm.
I agree. Absolutely. Not cover. Nice cover. Nice cover. Nice cover. Sorry about that. Nice cover.
Yeah, it is a beautiful cover.
It is beautiful. You can just stare at it wherever you are.
Yep.
I'll remove that for RT, MT. That Deodato record is great. Oh, I didn't know that Fish used that.
I didn't know that either.
Best fusion percussionist. Wow. Yeah, that's so true. You know, one thing you didn't mention, Sean, is Chris Connor. Chris Connors.
That's right. Yeah, that was the first record he ever produced for Bethlehem. Was he brought Chris Connor into the studio and produced her? You're right.
She's one of those beautiful voices that, you know, that hasn't quite gotten there as far as contemporary people who are buying records. Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, but Dakota State and Chris Connors, Johnny, some girl, and Kitty Callan. It just goes on and on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Chris Connor's always been pretty underrated as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it does. Makes perfect sense. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope Krate's music will continue to be purchased and loved and played.
I think it will, because I mean, anybody that loves jazz is going to play that stuff, because I mean, you can't escape him. You know, if you get into jazz, I mean, so many of the albums that you end up buying and listening to are going to be produced by Creed Taylor. I mean, the man was everywhere.
6 Degrees of Creed Taylor.
Right?
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah, Russell, it was the 50s. When Creed Taylor brought Chris Connor in to record her for Bethlehem, I believe that was it was either 1955 or 56.
Jazz related. Going to visit my dad this weekend, where I can take all the Glenn Miller, Sinatra, Benny Goodman, Bix records I can carry. Good for you. I mean, Glenn Miller did some good stuff, as well as Benny Goodman. If you can find that Benny Goodman, what is it, 1930?
Oh yeah, the 1938 jazz concert at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bring that one directly to me. I'll take that in a heartbeat. And if you can find Frank Sinatra at the Sands, those two.
Yeah, I have that 1938 concert on across 2 7-inch box sets. It came out in the early 50s on Columbia, I believe.
He probably has 5 copies of it. He probably had. Moonlight Serenade is a great tune.
Yes, it is.
Russell, you always come through with good jazz commentary and taste and cool things like that also. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm hoping Record Store Day will do something for Creed.
That'd be nice.
I don't think it would happen for Black Friday, but perhaps. And you don't even know who owns CTI Catalog.
Right now, I believe it's Universal.
And do you know who owns?
Sony Music owns the CTI.
Do you know who owns Impulse and ABC?
Impulse and ABC is all owned by Universal.
MT, I don't know the exact name of it, but it's a live recording. It's a live concert. Do you recall the title, Sean?
I believe it's just called the 1938 Carnegie Hall concert. This is the one I have of it. So it's 2 box sets of 7 inches that were. So what is
I
that?
remember those box sets. Yeah.
Yep, Carnegie Hall Jazz Concert.
But I can't remember. I have one in the vault. I can't remember if it's a double disc or a single disc. Yeah. I just honestly need more C's. Benny Goodman is overlooked. I agree with you there.
Yeah, he is. And you know what's funny is my wife is huge into clarinet. She majored in clarinet in college, and she actually can't stand jazz clarinet at all, and that includes Benny Goodman, which is funny because one of her favorite pieces in the world, one of her favorite classical pieces, she'll tell you, is Copland's Clarinet Concerto, which was written with Benny Goodman in mind.
But not his performance of it.
There are several versions of the Carnegie Hall's concert. So there you go. You're just going to have to look and bring back all of those MT.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember the first time I heard it, and I was like, how do they record that so it sounds so good today?
That was what struck me when I listened to it too, because I was like, man, for an electrical recording from, before we knew what magnetic tape was, for an electrical recording, that sounds amazing for 1938.
And then to think that it was probably released on 78. And
yeah, oh yeah.
Of course, yeah.
It was
like
one of those flip-book albums of 78.
Yeah. Charlie Christian is some good stuff. Absolutely. Well, make sure you don't leave your dad's records in the sun.
Good advice.
Goodman has had some of the earliest integrated bands and wouldn't go to hotels.
Yeah.
Problems with blacks. Good for him. Good for him.
I saw a really telling photograph not long ago. It was Duke Ellington playing sandlot baseball in the parking lot of a hotel, and it was a hotel for coloreds. And I'm like, man, Duke freaking Ellington, and the guy, it just bugs the crap out of me, the history of all of that, but it is what it is.
Good for Goodman. Thanks for doing that, and thanks for all the other cool people who stood up for humanity. I appreciate that so much. That is crazy. Yeah. But he blazed a trail. Yes, he did. Yeah. Thank God I can learn and move on. Oh, character limit. Yeah.
We know.
Yep, absolutely.
That's true, Rupert, especially jazz. And that's that's one of the things that has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, is when I hear people go, well, don't talk about politics as it relates to jazz. Don't mix politics in with my jazz. And it's like, it's unavoidable. Jazz is freedom and progress. And I mean, full stop. So it's like, you can't separate the two.
There you go. Yeah. Wow. There you go, folks. Get out there and play your Krate Taylor, your CTI, your Impulse, your ABC, your Bethlehem, and think of Creed. If you don't have any, get out there and buy some, because it's good stuff to have.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. And I just wish we had more videos of that stuff. I'm so glad.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
On YouTube. And Deodato, I've watched a lot of his stuff on YouTube.
There
which
was a
is
new
all.
video of Hank Mobley that just surfaced recently, and
Oh yeah,
yeah, that was nice to watch.
is that on the YouTube?
It is. I'll find it for you and send it to you.
Wow. Very cool. There's just so much cool stuff to do. So much good music to listen to, folks. Get out there and discover something and share it with your friends that maybe they don't know about. Unrelated to music. But the same thing happens in my other hobby, comic books. People say, take politics out of comics. And I point out in the 1938 Superman beat up people, busting humans.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, Roger Waters says if you something like, I'm one of those people that came here for the Pink Floyd songs, leave the politics behind. And Roger says, "F off and go to the bar if you wish," something like that. Paraphrasing, but
yeah,
good for Roger. Good for Roger.
That's
Sean?
that's. Oh yeah, yeah. You're gonna be doing a record sale here?
Well, TARDIS, I will let the talk with you about that. I have read so much about that both ways, and I'm really confused on it. But I would love to chat with you a little bit about that. TARDIS, absolutely. I don't have a record sale. I have a cassette sale coming up in just a little after 9. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and join that.
Yeah, so there we go. But yeah. What's next for you, Sean?
Not too much. Going on vacation for the long weekend. Gonna take my camper out and go do some camping. Leave tomorrow. Come back Monday. Should be good. I'm gonna go to the mountains. So.
Have you been checking the weather forecast?
Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to rain all day Sunday, so I figure Sunday I'll just go into Asheville and do some shopping. And for the days where it's going to be nice, we're going to go river tubing and just have a good old time.
Good for you. But the temperatures are going to drop down in the 60s, right?
Yep, that's going to be great. It means I can sleep at night without the AC on. Just open up the windows and sleep like a baby.
Go to campfire. There you go.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Fire weather. Yeah, absolutely. Bring the portable Victrola and play some records, and maybe not quite that old.
There you go.
Although the one thing you got to give those, they didn't need electricity.
That's true. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little while tonight. Appreciate it a bunch.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me, Adam.
You're welcome. Everybody, I'll talk with you soon. Have a good night. See you next time.